Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI360. Now, the Kankara community in northwest Katsina State is again agog with the release of 344 of their sons on Thursday evening. After days of negotiations brokered by Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association, the release of the boys was finally secured. The governor of Katsina State, Aminu Masara, who released the information, was quick to mention that no ransom was paid to secure the release of the boys. The boys, of course, were moved from Zamfara on Friday morning, where their abductors actually took them to Katsina now, where they eventually met with the governor and, of course, with the president of the country. It was like a Good Friday in the entire state as people jubilated the release, celebrated, I should say, the release of the students. Mothers, fathers, even teachers were full of praises for the government and the military for a job well done. Now, despite the release of the boys, there are many questions still begging for answers. The controversy now over who is responsible for the kidnap between Boko Haram and the bandits is still very unclear. Now, the question of whether ransom was paid or not is still it's still shrouded in mystery, even though the governor of both Zamfara State and Katsina State have come out clearly to say ransom wasn't paid for the release of the boys. Well, we just have to wait and see what happens in the coming days. And then the Miyetti Allah connection to the issue is also another angle Nigerians have been asking questions about. Joining me now to look at all these issues and more is security analyst Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is a security consultant. Dr. Adamu, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Yes, let me start by asking you this. Yes, we're celebrating the release of these boys, but let's start with the issue of who was actually responsible for the kidnappings. I mean, the government has come out plainly to say Boko Haram was not responsible. Boko Haram came out before the boys were released. They issued a video, for instance. We heard from Shekau that they actually coordinated and carried out the abduction. What's your take on all of this?
Thank you, DG. And once again, I would say congratulations to Nigerians, especially the parents of the boys, for this development. My professional understanding of the development is that it was bandits that carried out that abduction. Now, those bandits may have some form of association with the Jamaat al-Ahlussunnah al-Dawat wal-Jihad, which is the group headed by Bakari Shekau. But in terms of the actual abduction, I have a lot of reasons to conclude professionally that it was the bandits that did it. And the boys themselves, the rescued boys or the released boys, when they were interviewed, they also reached that conclusion. In the video that was released, supposedly by Bakari Shekau, the person authorizing or giving direction to the boys spoke in an accent that had a lot of Fulani accent behind it. He also spoke about something that is only specific to the conflict in the Northwest, when he said the boys should tell them to stop attacking Fulani, and also specifically asked for the dissolution of vigilante groups. Now, all these are issues that are peculiar to the bandits and the Fulanis that are operating in the Northwest. And together with several other factors, I am of the opinion that these were bandits, but they definitely had some form of association with the Jamaat al-Ahlussunnah al-Dawat wal-Jihad, which is not surprising, because we know that there has been an attempt by that group to reach out to bandit groups, and there have been several instances, including the release of videos, at least about 3 videos by cells in the Northwest pledging allegiance to this group, Jamaat al-Ahlussunnah al-Dawat wal-Jihad. So
now, how worrying would that be if Boko Haram is now expanding in its influence now to other parts of the North, in the Northwest, for instance? We've seen the presence of Boko Haram even in the North Central.
So we have to go back to 2011, 2012, when Jamaat al-Ahlussunnah al-Dawat wal-Jihad was formed. And then up to 2014, which was its peak. At that point, it became the world's deadliest terrorist group. I run a consultancy, and we keep a database of incidences by this group, as well as its influence. And I can tell you that as far back as that 2014, our map of its influence included all parts of the north, and unfortunately, to an extent, some southern parts, including Lagos and Ondo. So this is not too surprising. However, the dynamics currently that has resulted in what we're discussing is the military campaign against the group has been largely successful, to the extent that the membership of the group has reduced tremendously. On the other hand, the ideological underpinnings of the group has not been very successful. So the other faction, which is the Islamic State in West Africa province faction, has been growing in numbers more than this Jamaat al-Ahli al-Dawat wal-Jihad faction. And so it appeared to us that it was a strategic move based on this military pressure and the declining ideological relevance to reach out to these bandits and form some form of strategic alliance. And of course, the result of that would be whenever he wants to claim occurrences like this one that we're discussing, as well. Let's not forget too that early this year, around February, when the convoy of the Emir of Potiskum was attacked, it was claimed, and this was in Kaduna State, between Zaria and Kaduna, close to Jaji actually. It was claimed by at least one of the factions of Boko Haram. So we know that this type of association does exist. It's not necessarily a new thing. The other part that is also important is the same socioeconomic conditions that exist in the northeast that allow these groups to fester also exist in the northwest. The ungoverned spaces such as Sambisa Forest, where these groups operate in the northeast, also you have forests like that. In fact, you have more of such forests in the northwest. So frankly, it's not too surprising that the two groups are attempting to form some form of loose association at the moment.
Now, there's a question I have to ask you. Are you not surprised that these attacks could happen in the first place? We had something like this with the Chibok girls. Then we had the Dapchi attack, and then this one. And in this case, this happened. Look, apart from being the home state of the president, but it happened in broad daylight. How could you move over 300 students? And we understand these attackers came on a bike, so there must have been so many of them. How could this have happened without any intervention from the security agencies or even from the community where the school is located? And how is it that, look, this must have taken some time to plan. How is it that there was no intelligence at all that this was going to happen?
Okay. So to sort of conceptualize and put where we are in perspective, it's on record. I told you I run a consultancy and we keep a database of these incidences. Between 2014 and to date, over 1,400 schools have been either attacked, destroyed by these conflict actors in Nigeria. Then about 1,300 students and teachers have either been killed or disappeared as a result of this action. So we have enough reason to have concluded that our schools are vulnerable. They are soft targets and are being attacked by these groups. And that means we should have taken more action to protect our schools. And in this regard, given the conflict dynamics in the Northwest, it was unfathomable that you would have a school such as GSS Kankara, knowing that some of the forests where these bandits operate run through Kankara. In fact, run through 8 local governments. So it was unfathomable that those schools at least didn't have robust protection. That's number one. Number two, there was some form of security presence. There were 2 police officers in the school. Unfortunately, one of them was, if I recall well, was killed during the attack, while the other one was injured. At the last count. I know he was still in the hospital. Then we were also told by the defense spokesperson that a military team was on patrol when the attack happened. Just to put it in perspective, the attack started around 9 p.m., 9:30 precisely. So it was in the dead of night, but that there was a military patrol, and the military patrol had, when the attack was ongoing, but at that time, the students had already been hardened. And so to protect the lives of the student, the military team did not engage the attackers in a gun duel. And so they were able to harden.
But even at that, the logistics of moving over 300 students, the logistics of moving them, it must have taken a lot of time.
I will clarify that to you based on the account of the students that escaped. Now, what they said happened was they were hardened, and then they were now asked to, they were hardened and surrounded, encapsulated as it were, inside a rink by these armed guys. That's number one. Number two, some of the armed guys were wearing security uniform. The boys did not say whether military or police, but in the video that was released by, allegedly by Boko Haram, we saw that they were wearing military fatigue, camouflage. So these boys thought these guys were security personnel. So when they hardened them, they told them to move. And when they were moving, they saw clearly that that those guys were not security personnel. However, they had bikes that they wanted to transport them with. So it appears the attackers didn't know they were going to get the numbers that they got, because they realized too that the bikes could not convey the boys to where they wanted to. So they dropped the idea of the bike and then went on foot. And according to the boys, they were making calls, getting directives from whoever it was the leader of the gang. And that in the process, 6 villagers were abducted. And that these 6 villagers, the leader of the attackers actually said that those 6 villagers should be killed, but that the field leader decided not to kill them. So it appears the plan, the action was not completely coordinated in the manner that they didn't know they were going to get those numbers that they got. The initial plan was to take them on motorbikes, but when they saw the numbers, of course, it wasn't possible. So they just herded them into the forest. Now, remember it happened at night, and also remember that in the cover of night, a lot could be done. So they herded them into the forest, trekked for hours, because the boys said they trekked from that around 11 when they left the Kankara town until the next day, and that during the trek, they were avoiding settlement. So they went around settlements until they reached where they kept them in Chafe in Zamfara state.
Yeah, because it's just baffling to herd over 300 students. I mean, you can imagine how long the line would be. And that not anyone knew, or I mean, or even did something to intervene. It's really baffling. But what about the area of intelligence? How come? Is it something that you can try to help us understand? How come intelligence was not available?
So intelligence that would have forewarned us something like that is going to happen clearly was not available. Even if it was available, it was never used, because the essence of intelligence is to prevent development like this from occurring. So the fact that it occurred tells me clearly that the intelligence was not helpful in this instance. Now, I'm of the opinion that we need to conduct an investigation as a nation to ask critical questions regarding our intelligence capabilities. There was a time in the past when our intelligence capabilities was quite good. We could, and we were in the picture of what was happening. NSAS happened. Clearly, the Nigerian government wasn't aware that NSAS was going to happen, despite the signature that it left on the digital space, in cyber space. Anyone monitoring cyberspace would have an idea that there was a mobilization and that a movement was about to occur. So likewise, this development, it appears we were caught off guard. The intelligence capabilities that we should have as a country was not available. Intelligence, unfortunately, is a very secretive thing, so we don't know the reasons, but I can hazard, if you guess, perhaps funding may have affected the capabilities of some of the agencies within this intelligence community. So if that is the case, I think the presidency needs to look closely at that and ensure they release those funds to allow those intelligence agencies to do what they are supposed to do. Beyond that, we can harvest intelligence, through human presence, like it used to happen in the past. These villages where these people passed knew what was happening. I just mentioned to you that 6 persons, according to the account of the boys that were released, 6 other villagers were abducted together with them.
And the problem is, if villagers don't provide information, then it's difficult.
DEJI, it's a two-way thing. The villagers don't have means to provide the intelligence. You have to go to them to harvest it. You can keep a valuable item in your office, and if you don't tell your team that item is valuable and this is what they should do with it, except if they are curious and all that, then nobody is likely to even know that you've kept it there. So the government intelligence department need to harvest this intelligence. They should not wait for the villagers to provide it, especially since there is no means of communication between the villagers and most of the security agencies. As an example, in Kankara, I doubt if there are up to 10 police personnel, and the SSS will probably just have 1 person. And frankly, the attitude of most of our security agencies is this top-down approach where they look down on these villagers. So we need to change that and start harvesting the intelligence. Let me give you an example. The market is a good ground for harvesting intelligence. 350 people, if you are feeding them, people come to buy things. At the village level, somebody would probably just buy 1 pure water. All of a sudden, you are hearing somebody buying, 3, 4 sacks of pure water. That for me is intelligence. But how do you know that? It's by having presence in that market, both in terms of ears and eyes, and making sure that you know what is happening. So that is the way to go. We need to learn to harvest those intelligence. If we think the villagers would just make it available to us, well, they don't probably even know the value of, they wouldn't have that knowledge. If somebody is buying that amount of pure water, it would not mean anything to them. But if you are trained in intelligence, you would have an idea that something is amiss. I've been in this village for the last 18 years or 20 years, and I've never had a time when somebody is coming to buy this number of pure water. Or in the case of the Chibok girls, the hijab they were wearing, somebody bought that hijab, somebody sewed that hijab. So if we are paying attention to intelligence, those are the kind of things we're paying. Intelligence will not come to you as a full picture. It will come to you in pieces, and you need to piece that together, and that's the value of the fusion of intelligence. President Buhari has given directives for the fusion of intelligence. Unfortunately, that has not been done yet. So all the intelligence agencies need to fuse whatever it is they have together. We should have something that looks like a pool where when you get information, you just put it there, and then you should have analysts that will now be able to interpret that information make some sense out of it. There are 3 or 5 levels of intelligence collection, and each of them is relevant. Unfortunately, intelligence is not something you discuss in public, but I want to say that there is room for improvement.
And the fact is that without intelligence, it's difficult to see how we can win this war against banditry and insurgency. But let me ask you a final question before I let you go very quickly. Of course, the government, both the Zamfara state government and the Katsina state governors now have come out to say no ransom was paid. Would you be surprised, say in the future, you hear, for instance, that something actually exchanged hands?
So in my field, ransom can mean different things. To the average Nigerian, ransom means money. But in the field of intelligence, ransom can mean several things. There is political ransom, there is prisoner exchange, that too could be ransom, and then sometimes even medicine, drugs, or even weapons. So frankly, I would not be surprised if in the long run, we hear that some form of, incentivization was included in the discussion that led to the release of these boys.
And do we hope to see any arrest in the future? Because no arrest has been announced now anyway.
To do whatever it takes to ensure that this does not repeat itself. And if you allow me quickly, I'll mention that one of them is to ensure that those behind this are punished. If you allow this to go, the publicity that this has gained would mean other groups who want that kind of publicity would go in and do the same thing. Then, of course, we don't know yet if there was an incentivization. If there was, they that are in the forest would know. And so that means going forward, we would have that. But beyond that, and I think it's critical to our discussion and as a country, we need to implement the Safe School Declaration. We signed that declaration, but we are yet to implement it. So I think the whole of government, the state government, the federal government, should come together with the legislature and seek ways to implement that Safe School Declaration so that all the schools in the country would be safe for our pupils to know. I told you earlier on that 1,400 plus schools have been attacked or destroyed, and that's not acceptable. Without education, our country is not going anywhere. In fact, as it were, we're backwards in so many things. So what happens if the education sector, exchange sector, collapses? That's number one. Number two, the ungoverned spaces where these bandits and gunmen operate, the forest, the reserves, they need to be occupied and dominated. Whatever measure we take, if we don't occupy those forests, then these guys will continue to do what they are doing. Number three, the administration of criminal justice must be strengthened so that offenders are punished. One of the demands in the video is that vigilantes should stop attacking Fulani. And that's something that the governors in the Northwest need to look into. The kind of coexistence, harmony between Hausas and Fulani and the conflict that is existing at the moment needs to be addressed. There must be some engagement process that will bring the two sides together, and the labeling and stigmatization that has led to attacks on Fulanis, especially their women who come to market, must be brought to a stop. It is this type of thing that is breeding that. Then cattle rustling that has affected the economy of the Fulanis must be addressed, and that is why I say the administration of criminal justice is absolutely important. Then the police need to engage the vigilantes to train them so that they understand that they cannot take the law into their hands. They can effect arrest if they suspect anyone, but the moment they effect that arrest, it is not in their place to issue judgment. They should take that suspect to any government body that has the powers to prosecute. It's not in their hands to now kill that person or burn that person or even go to villages of these Fulanis and kill them. And then lastly, the proliferation of weapons. We must take measures to block the borders and then recoup these weapons that are already in circulation. All of these offenses that we're talking about are carried out with weapons. So if we allow weapons to continue the proliferating, we're not going to bring this to an end. The governors of the states, the politics that is involved should be executed. They need to form a regional network, Kaduna, Zamfara, Katsina, Sokoto, all the governors that are being affected by this, because this forest that we're talking about transverses all the states. So if one governor is taking measures and the others are not taking, it will not mean anything. They need to come together as one, take measures regionally, and then hopefully this will come to an end.
Kabir Adamu, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your contributions.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Kabir Adamu, who is a security consultant, and he spoke to us via Skype from Abuja. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. On DEJI360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that band.
DEJI360, providing clarity to issues.